Welcome to episode 28 of the Brew Crew Scoop. Scoop and Cole here. Thanks for tuning in. The Brewers just returned home from Philly, Detroit, and they play at home against Toronto tonight. There's a lot on the rundown, but most importantly, Cole, how are you? Or, excuse me, my name is Kian. How are you?
Yeah, I was gonna be eating something and then my internet was gonna go out and then I was gonna do my best Kean impression. No, I'm good. Um, Gonna be an interesting week, and I think we'll hit on it, but the Brewers got some news actually real recently that might play into the plans for the next month or so and leading up to the deadline.
Yeah, that's first on the rundown. The most major news of the week for the Crew is that the breakout rookie left-handed pitcher Robert Gasser, the main part of the, well, arguably main part of the Josh Hader return, who's come up and looked really, really good. He is weighing the possibility of elbow surgery. He's seen the famous Dr. Neil Elatraj, and he is waiting on a third opinion right now. Sounds like his UCL is intact but is weak, so they're debating what the course of action is. But we'll get real deep into that. But that's the semi-breaking news of the week for the Crew. Going right away into the recap of the week in Philadelphia and Detroit. In game one in Philly, Koenig opened and Wilson went long. He gave up 3 earned. Wheeler kept the Brewers off the board except for a solo homer from Rhys Hoskins at his homecoming. They lost 3-1. Game two, Koenig went again to open the game. Ray went long. Brewers scored 1 in the third, but that's all they could get off of Christopher Sanchez. Alec Bohm homered off of Peguero in the 8th to send it to extras, where Castellanos walked it off with a double in the 10th off of Yoel Payams. Brewers lost 2-1. And then game 3 on Wednesday, Ashby versus Nola, the return of Aaron Ashby. Hadn't seen him in a couple months. Ashby looked okay. He looked decent. But he went 5. Castellanos 2-run homer spoiled his day in the 5th. Those would be the only runs of the game. Ashby had 2 earned, 2 hits, but 3 Ks and 5 walks. So kind of a mixed line there. But overall, the result was fairly solid. So hopefully we see him factoring in a positive fashion for this team soon. Brewers were swept on a 2-0 loss. And there was a little bit of a mini panic about the bats because that's all we have. And then the next game against the Tigers, the Brewers went out and trounced former Crew farmhand Reese Olson. Um, they had 5 in the second, 3 in the fourth, and 2 in the fifth. Tobias Myers went 8 scoreless against a decent Tigers lineup. And 1 hit, 5 Ks, 3 walks. James Meeker closed it out in his MLB debut. Terang, Contreras, Ortiz, and Perkins each had a pair of RBI. Frelick had 1. Terang was 4 for 5. Yelly was 3 for 3, and the Brewers won 10-0. So it was really refreshing to see after a buzzsaw Phillies team shut us down. Game 2 against the Tigers, it was Freddie versus Casey Mize. Fortunately, Freddie left with an apparent injury early, but all reports are that he's seemed to be okay. He said after the game, but they faced a 4-1 deficit after 2. Yelly and Adames manufactured a pair in the third. Chourio had a big 2 RBI double to give them the 5-4 lead that would stand for the win. Koenig, Paredes, Hudson, Payams, McGill would pick up the slack with 5.2 scoreless innings. And the Crew won. Game 3 against the Tigers, they were not able to complete the sweep. They saw the opposite of game 1. Wilson gave up 7 earned and 4 and a third. The Brewers were down 10-0 after 5. Couple of RBI extra base hits from Terang and Monasterio made it a 10-2 loss. Brewers were 2-4 on the week, all on the road. Ran into a buzzsaw Phillies team, 3 incredible arms. That was the big storyline, and then the other big storyline was a potential Freddie Peralta injury. But we didn't see a ton about it. But after the game, he was asked about it, and he said that physically he is fine. So that's good to hear, despite the news of Robert Gasser.
Yeah, tough week. The Phillies series, again, good thing Kean's not on here. He'd probably be pretty concerned right now. But we don't have any overreactors in-house today, so we're not too worried. But it is tough to watch that series. It's kind of the fear that we are talking about with the potential roster makeup for the playoffs, right? And I mean, honestly, the pitching still fared well, but if the hitting's not going to show up, we're probably not going to be able to outpitch Wheeler. Well, look at the Rangers rotation, right? They have like 4 of the top, whatever, 5 ERAs in the NL basically. But yeah, it was good to get back on track. And then we ran into, the AL Cy Young front runner and can't really, well, shouldn't say we can't expect to win that game. But that is a tough one.
Yeah, definitely need the bats to keep firing if we want this team to continue to be a serious playoff contender, because as it stands, that pitching rotation is stretched very thin. A rotation that we already weren't super high on going into the year is thin right now. But on the flip side of that, who was your untouchable pitcher of the week?
You fellas are untouchable. Is that the thing? No one can get to you?
Untouchable. Yeah. I gotta go with Tobias Myers.
Oh, good choice.
I mean, honestly, anytime one of these starters goes 8 innings, you might get this award, because if you go over 5, it's kind of worth a double take at this point. Guy that people had mentioned maybe he should be back in AAA where he can get a little more comfortable. People thought he was kind of rushed up here. Maybe he is, but we've discussed it at length many a time. We just don't have the personnel currently to let him develop a little extra. So ushered him back up here, and 8 innings pitched, 1 hit, 3 walks, 5 Ks. Doesn't get too much simpler than that. If he can cut back a little bit on walks too, might have a 9th inning in him at that rate with conserving pitches. So love to see it. And then got to give a shout out to Brian Hudson, 3 innings pitched, a walk, 5 Ks. Again, people were all over me after I hyped him up, and then the Cubs ran into him a little bit. He still got the win in that game against the Cubs, but they did get to him. But one little bump in the road, and he's back to himself. And I was going to shout out Koenig. He might lead the team in starts this year at the current rate. 4 innings pitched, 1 hit, surrendered, 4 Ks, and a dub. So in the one game, I think he wasn't the opener. He got the win. And I'll touch on him a little bit later as well.
Yeah, I got nothing to add. Tobias Myers, big game for him. He hadn't like crazy impressed me with the stuff. He's one of those guys who just has a lot of decent pitches, nothing crazy. So kind of wishy-washy on him. And I'm not saying one start changed it, but really good to see. That definitely affects my opinion of him in a positive manner. We don't have a choice right now to start him anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, like, I mean, if you're familiar with the prospect rankings and such that everyone loves to look at in the offseason, Tobias Myers' name was nowhere near the top, right? So anything he's providing to us, in my opinion, is house money. And the fact that he's at least, I mean, even with his starts that weren't overly impressive, they definitely weren't terrible, right? It's not like we were running out whatever, Kyle Hendricks, for example, and just like, okay, well, there's a loss that day. It's like, okay, he'll keep us in the game maybe, and if we hit, we hit. So he's definitely overachieved, I think, and he's not a name that the once a week kind of fan that might go to a game once a month kind of guy is gonna know really well, but he's definitely done more than any of us would have expected at the start of the year. So that alone, we can be thankful, and if he can keep up what we just saw, which we're gonna have to hope he can with pitchers dropping like flies. But yeah, no, I agree. Good stuff.
Who was your hot hitter for the week?
Oh, stop dropping on fire, Ricky Bobby! I'm on fire! He's so hot right now.
Yeah, we talked about the Phillies series not being full of runs, and yesterday, obviously, also not full of scoring. So that would make you think we didn't hit so well, and I would say you're correct. But a certain individual had a very good week, and since my name is Kian, I'm gonna shout out Mr. Rake Perkins. 21 at bats, 5 singles, a double, 2 triples, 5 runs, 2 RBI, and a walk. He and, depending on what pitcher we're facing, Joey Ortiz and this week Chourio at the bottom of the lineup actually play a huge role in turning around the lineup and providing some runners for Terang if we're facing a righty to knock some guys in, and then obviously the big boys, the Contreras, Yelly, Adames, 3-man punch there in the middle to score those guys. So last week especially, I think I noticed what the power of a bottom of a lineup can do with guys that actually can hit, because we've had some lineups in the last few years where you get to 6, 7, 8, 9, and you're just waiting till you get back to the top so guys actually can hit. So Rake Perkins at the bottom of the lineup doing a job is going to be the hot hitter. And honorable mention is a guy I guess I just mentioned, Bryce Terang. 22 at bats, 6 singles, a double, a triple, 4 runs, 3 RBI, walk, and 3 steals. So every time I discuss Bryce Terang as a hot hitter, I just imagine last year at this time, and his name would never come up. Actually, there might have been 1 week I remember where he was hot, but
yeah, the grand slam and
yeah. But in reality, total 360. I was looking, I think yesterday or a couple days ago, we were having a discussion with a couple of the big baseball fans that we communicate with a lot, and we were having a discussion about WAR and so on, and that brought me to looking at Bryce Terang's WAR from last year, which he was like a positive 1.5 B-WAR player, and his OPS plus was 60. Which, yeah, again, I'm not going to rehash the WAR question we discussed, but just made me think how, I don't want to say bad, but bad Bryce Terang was last year at the plate, and this year we're seeing a totally different player, and it is quite refreshing to see. So those are the 2 guys.
Yeah, Terang. We had tweeted yesterday. He's 4th in the NL in WAR behind Mookie and Ohtani, and then of course the other one being Ketel Marte, who is going for the same All-Star starting spot. Unfortunately, he's definitely putting up numbers good enough to be the starting second baseman. Hitting over 300 still. OPS. Do the mental math. Not quite 800, but 24 runs batted in, 23 of 24 on stolen bases. So Terang just continues to be awesome. So that's really good to see, because there were times last year where even though he's a rookie, you really were questioning. So, but yeah, it's a good time to say that I threw a poll out on Twitter about how many All-Stars you think the Brewers will have, and 78% of people said 1 to 3 All-Stars, and then 15% said 4 All-Stars, and then just a couple percent each for 5 or 6 plus. I don't think it'll be 6, but realistically, there's 7 guys that have a chance, I think, right now, and I think Contreras is obviously a lock. I think Terang is, I don't want to say a lock, but I think he's pretty close to being the second baseman. And
yeah, I think it's just hard with name value, but skill wise.
And then I do think that, I mean, Hudson will have to keep this up for another, 3 weeks. But if he does, I think that even though he's not getting saves, I think he's got a pretty good chance. I think Peralta is on the outside looking in right now, but he always has the chance to put together 3 or 4 really good starts, and he has the name. But then there's the guys who are right in the middle, I believe at least, in Ortiz, Adames, and Yelich. So I wanted to get your opinion on those guys, where you think they stand in the All-Star race. I know Yelly has the numbers for sure, and actually the NL outfield hasn't been too impressive yet, but he's missed a little bit of time, so the counting stats are maybe just a hair behind. And then Adames has been great, but obviously Mookie Betts is pretty much the lock to start at short. And then Joey Ortiz has been plenty good enough to be an All-Star at this point, but again, the name factor, the rookie. So curious to hear how many All-Stars you think the Brewers would have. I think right now I'd probably say 4, I guess. 4 or 5. But
I think I'm similar.
78% of people said less than 4. So
yeah, I think part of it too is if you would have made it like, or if the poll was maybe 1 and 2 or 3 or 4, I think 3 would have probably been the leading vote getter. But we just, I mean, when you go through the names again, all those guys have an argument. But I think especially when you get down to it and the politics of the marketing of the All-Star game and all that starts to come into play, it's pretty rare that many All-Star, we said 6 guys have an argument. Not really going to happen. I think just in reality of, the Phillies are stacked, the Dodgers are stacked. I think it'll get tough there to get that many numbers, but on paper, like you said, you lay out the cases, and I think they're there. I'd say, like you said, Contreras is a lock. I think he's the only actual lock
Yeah.
currently. But I could very easily see Terang, Adames, and Ortiz, to be honest with you. But I would say our second most likely is Yelich, just because he has the name, he has the counting stats, and the outfield for the NL stinks. So
Yeah.
I'm saying those two are pretty much a lock as long as Yelich doesn't have like a cold spurt, which he has every once in a while. But if he can stay pretty hot, I think those two are in. And then Hudson, I think we'll get the nod when it comes around to the MLB, the coaches vote type of situation on the back end. I don't think he's gonna get the fan vote, but the coaches, actually, I guess it doesn't matter. He's a pitcher. What am I
Right.
talking
Yeah.
about? So I think he'll actually might be able to backdoor there, and then I think Adames will. But it's hard to say. And Ortiz might just be an odd man out because we have a lot of guys performing well, and he still has to up the counting stats because he was in that platoon for so long. But if he keeps up what he's been doing for the next couple of weeks, he'd be another guy that's hard to keep out. But without being too optimistic, I'll just say 4 and hedge the bet. But I think more than that, have a really, really, really good case. And if the front of our jersey said Dodgers, we might have 5 or 6. But
Yeah, when's the last time the Brewers had 5 serious hitting all-stars? Like that's pretty. I mean, I want to say maybe 2018 with Kane, Yelich. I mean, I don't think Braun was really in the mix for the All-Star game. Obviously, he wasn't an All-Star, but
Ryan Brown's my favorite player.
Aguilar, yeah, Kane. But yeah, 5 hitters that are in serious contention to not only make an All-Star team, but couple with the chance to start. So really cool to see. And then before we get into Statcast, you mentioned Chourio having a couple good at bats. I'll move this up a little bit in the rundown. What are your thoughts about Chourio having a lot of off days against right-handed pitching? I've seen some back and forth on Twitter about that.
Yeah, I think the real problem is that I think we'll talk about it, but Garrett Mitchell is starting his rehabs too. And once he's back, assuming no one gets hurt in the next week or two, there's an extra mouth to feed there, especially with the exact split you were talking about. And you can't really argue Rake Perkins out of the lineup right now. Yelly is doing fine in left, and we need that DH spot for other people currently, I think. Better bats with Sanchez or Reese, depending on defense at first. But I think it just makes it really tough. And I think I was listening to Kurt Hogue and that pod today.
Microbrew. Yep.
Actually, today Kurt Hogue wasn't even on. It was Rosiak, I think.
Okay.
But they discussed when he comes back what the move is, and really you got to think it's either Chourio or Sal are probably an odd man out. And at this point, for the exact thing you just said, I almost would like to see Chourio in AAA and just let him play every single day as a top 3 order guy and let him get the at bats. If we're not going to let him do that here, which currently I don't really think there's a good argument to have him be an everyday guy right now. I'm sure we could afford to do it, right? We're hitting well, and he does have the upside that things might go right, and he could be fine. But yeah, in a different world where we don't have all this talent in the outfield, I agree that he should be an everyday guy and let him get his hacks, and he'll grow in the role. But since we just have that luxury, maybe let him get the taste of AAA that we didn't, and let him get warm, and we'll bring him back. But I don't know. What's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that I think what's most important, I've always been in the camp of let Chourio quote unquote struggle. I wouldn't even say that he's like, I mean, he's struggling a little bit, but for a 20-year-old rookie that we know he's a little premature. I'm all for keeping him up all year, letting him get the experience. But that said, what may be most important for his development is getting everyday at bats. So if like you said, good problem to have. If he can get regular playing time, maybe it's not every day on the major league roster, I say keep him here. But if Garrett Mitchell comes back and is tearing the cover off the ball, and hopefully, and all of a sudden we have 4 guys that are outfielders that need to play every day, and we're using the DH on Gary Sanchez anyways.
Well, we'd have 5 guys at that point.
Well, right. I'm just
Right?
saying at
Yeah.
least 4 above.
Yeah. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, then it may make some sense, even though it would be not sad to see, but disappointing to not see him every day anymore or see him with the major league team. Definitely think the most important thing is for him to get regular bats, and I just hope that he knows that he's not getting discouraged at all by the fact that he's been on the bench. So, and that's where Willie Adames and William Contreras, they talk about mentoring him, come into place. I'm sure that he's got a good sense of everything that's going on, but still cool to see him coming in and having a couple big hits in recent.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But I'm almost curious too if he'd have an opinion. I'm sure he wouldn't say he wants to go down, but if they present it as you can play every single day, maybe that helps his confidence too. But he seems like he likes the challenge, but we'll see.
Yeah, maybe if it's even for a month and they say, hey, you'll be back in July, but
yeah,
you want to just get hot, whatever. What do you have for Statcast?
Yeah, so I said I was gonna bring back some Jared Koenig discussion, and I just wanted to talk about him hitting 98 in some outings this week. On Monday, he hit, and then Tuesday he hit 98.9. Monday he hit 98.2 is where he topped out. Had a couple other pitches in the 97 range. Yeah, just I guess Jared Koenig is randomly popping up with some extra velo we didn't know about.
I stole my one Statcast note. I have one line. Koenig's average sinker in 2022 was 89.2 and now is 94.2, and we saw him touch 99. That's all I had for Statcast.
There you go.
So I hit it right on the head.
Yep. And then as long as I was looking at those exact stats, I jumped into Ashby's start because that's another thing we looked at, right, and discussed is his velo coming off the injuries and such. And he topped out at 96.4 and averaged 94.9, basically 95 with I guess it's technically a sinker. Good to see. That's closer to where he was pre-injury. I will say, and you talked about it, but he had a on paper pretty good outing, but he also struggled with walks, and that's something the way he's kind of been hit this year. I don't think he can afford to do, but it was definitely encouraging from what we saw in his first part of the minor league season and how he performed when he was with the big league club. So I'm not sure what the future plans are, but obviously with more pitchers falling, it'll be important for him. So that was a big piece, is just getting some of that velo back.
Yeah, it's been much better because I think they said in some of those rehab starts even last year, earlier this year, how it was a struggle to get into like
90,
the 90s consistently. Yeah. And so to see him averaging 95 is over 5 innings is incredible.
Yep, that's what I got. I kept it simple, and admittedly, I'm just rather busy with online master's courses and life. So
yeah, looking at the standings then, so the Brewers went 2-4 in the week. That puts them at 38-27. They're still 11 games over 500. They have a 6.5 game lead over the Reds, Cards, and Cubs, and then a 7 game lead over the Pirates. The whole NL is bunched up right now, with still only 4 teams over 500. And the other 5 divisions have the same 5 suspects at the top. You don't need to bother because you know who they are. There are still only 4 teams, like I said, over 500, and it's the Dodgers, Braves, Phillies, and Brewers. So I was seeing a lot of banter today on social media and listened to, I think, Baseball is Dead, talking about the expanded playoff could look really interesting now. We saw last year a team with 84 wins get in and break our hearts and go to the World Series. And there could be a team this year that's 500 or below. And I don't hate the expanded playoff how it is. I think I'd prefer it with one less team, but I'm not going to sit here and act like I know the perfect amount of teams be in the playoffs. But I wonder if a 500 team or a 80 win team makes them rethink it, because I don't know, that's the purpose of the MLB playoffs, to let an under 500 team into the playoffs. So we'll see how it shakes out. Obviously, things will change, but it seems like, I mean, 4 out of 15 teams being over 500 for the last like few weeks is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of season left, but
And then the Brewers injury and transactions news section. We talked about Robert Gasser's elbow, structurally intact, but not as strong should be. So we will see what comes of that. Pat Murphy said today that he hopes he's wrong, but he's planning for Gasser to not factor in for the rest of the season. DL Hall is en route to Nashville right now to pitch for them. So hopefully we see him back soon. He had that little bit of a snag, well, literally a snag in the cleat, but in the rehab with his knee. So good to see him back in AAA. Abner Uribe was being evaluated for a right knee injury, unfortunately, in AAA. So he's having an MRI tomorrow, Tuesday. JB Bukowskis is rehabbing starting at the end of the week. Joe Ross had a setback, unfortunately. And then Jacob Junis is due back soon. He was signed to the Complex League today, I believe, and he's got a simulated game in Arizona on Wednesday. And then they said after that he should be ready to be back, but they have to decide if he's essentially good enough to be back. I guess they're evaluating the stuff, but health wise he should be good. We already talked about Chourio, but then Mitchell minor league rehab starts tomorrow. They said he'll get about 30 ABs before he's ready. So we should see Garrett Mitchell back maybe in about a week. Eliezer, did I say that right? Hernandez? Is that how it's
I
pronounced?
think, yeah, Eliser, maybe
Eliser?
Hernandez. Yeah.
Yep. He joined the team on a 1-year deal. And
He used to,
then
yeah, he started in his past as well.
okay.
And then
Yeah.
had some injury stuff and so on, but not a bad guy to have. He's, like I said, started, so he's capable of eating some innings, and can't have enough of those guys on this team,
Mhm.
evidently.
And then the one non-injury or transaction news was Willie broke the franchise record with 64 games played, all 64 games played to start the year. So that was the longest streak by teammates in franchise history. Cool to see
How's that record going?
it's over. They said it.
I know.
They're done. Yeah, I wonder how that'll pan out later in William Contreras' career. Obviously, I mean, you see his calves and quads. He's built like a truck when it comes to the legs, but obviously he's still young. I wonder down the line how long he'll continue to be able to catch every single day.
I watched
pretty
Jason
incredible.
Kendall play as
Yeah.
a Brewer at the tail end there. I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah. You got anything that I missed in the news section?
Not necessarily. I might have missed it too when I was getting my background ready.
yeah.
But did you mention Taylor Clark?
No, oh no, I did not.
Yeah, so he's been starting in getting some innings in I believe AAA in his rehab, and it's going pretty well. And he's a guy that we originally signed, thinking I think he'd be on our opening day roster. So it's not a call up and not a random waiver acquisition. He should be ready and back relatively soon. So that is another tool. And did you mention Junis as well? I think you
Yep.
did, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's also been rehabbing, and his velocity looks okay. Obviously, coming off a shoulder, you never know. But yeah, so that's exciting. Lots of guys going down, but lots of guys coming back.
Around the farm,
If it hadn't been for those meddling kids.
If it hadn't been for you meddling kids. Ah, meddling kids. If it hadn't been for these meddling laddies.
Carlos F. Rodriguez was named the International League Pitcher of May, and he will be making his debut tomorrow. When this podcast comes out, it will be Tuesday against the Toronto Blue Jays. We will be there in person to scout it out for you guys. Really excited to see that. He's a guy who we've been he's the fourth piece of the Brewers minor league player and pitchers of the year from last year to appear in a game with Black, Chourio, and Gasser. So really excited to see Carlos F. Rodriguez. right-handed pitcher every week. I swear there's a new pitcher that I didn't hear about in the system who's
Yes,
been tearing it up.
sir.
So that's awesome to see. Right-handed pitcher Hayden Robinson won the complex pitcher of the month with 15 and a third innings, 21 Ks, 5 earned runs. And then going along the same lines of that of guys I had never heard of, Timber Rattlers left-handed pitcher Brian Fitzpatrick over his last 2 outings had 9 innings, no runs, 7 hits, 3 walks, and 10 Ks. Craig Yoho, who is a Brew Crew Scoop podcast favorite, has struck out 13 of the 22 batters he's faced in Double-A so far. I think we'll see him in Nashville pretty soon. And Chad Patrick in Triple-A just continues to pitch well. He had another outing, 7 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned, 9 Ks, no walks. I think we're going to see a start from Chad Patrick soon in Milwaukee. And then the last thing is, I think we're getting pretty close to the point where we don't have to worry about the Super 2 cutoff anymore with Tyler Black. And his cumulative stats in AAA this year, 39 runs batted in and 10 stolen bases in only 47 games. So if we deem necessary, Tyler Black will be back in Milwaukee soon.
Yep. Yeah. I was pretty hyped when I saw Cooper Pratt as the minor league player of the month, because before the year I was getting pretty hype about him, just
Yeah.
his prospect profile, and as the high schooler, one of the guys from this draft that people thought we got a steal on, with amping up some plot value later on in the earlier rounds. So awesome to see him balling out. And I saw a stat about Miz. Go figure. What was the stat though? Here. His four seam has the lowest contact rate allowed in Double-A and the second lowest in all of minor league baseball. If he's a guy that if he gets up, I'm not saying he's Mason Miller, but he's got the stuff where I think people will be talking about his electricity. But yeah, like you said, no shortage of arms in the org apparently. And then all these guys in the complex league too that are popping up, the young talent that, you don't want to be too excited about, but lots of highlights and high performers, it seems.
The random game in Brewers history.
Random.
June 6, 2011. This won't come as a surprise to you, Cole. We just saw this, but the Brewers finished a 4-game sweep in Florida of the Marlins. Zach Greinke got the win. Prince Fielder had a 3-run homer plus a 4th RBI, and Ryan Braun had 2 hits and an RBI. That win, that was 13 years ago this past Wednesday, was the 1,000th in the National League for the Brewers, where they became the first, and they still stand as the only franchise to win 1,000 games as an American League team and a National League team. So, pretty cool distinction. Yeah. Eventually, we'll see the Astros do the same, but for
That's
now,
what I was gonna say.
It's just us.
Yep, we're just a franchise that is well known for our long legacy of wins.
Yep. That's because Bud Selig was commissioner, and he had to let us be the ones that had to switch. And then small MLB news. Well, maybe not small, but since it's not Brewers related and it wasn't the major headline, Tucupita Marcano was banned for life for betting on baseball, betting very poorly at a 4% success rate.
Heard he's a parlay guy. Heard he's a parlay
parlays guy.
You never know though. Maybe he's hitting them at a high enough clip. He only needs that for whatever percent.
And then a few other guys were suspended for a year. I'd have to imagine that, obviously not baseball related. I have to imagine it was just an illegal bookkeeper. But
well, I think it's because they were in the minors and were betting on MLB, but they weren't actually on the teams. But I guess if you bet on your own team is the real bad one. But they also weren't in the MLB, I believe. Because I think it was from a legal book, which makes it better, but also worse because it's like they have your name and identification.
Well, one of them was Andrew Salfrank, who pitched against us and got 2 big outs against us in the wild card series. So I think they should void that, in my opinion. But and then Luis Robert or Luis Robert, there's been some back and forth. Or Lou Bob. The White Sox are asking for return greater than the Juan Soto return from the Padres, which, don't get me wrong, when he's on, he's great. But I was just looking right before this. He's only played like 380 career games.
Yeah, he's always hurt. But it is
Right.
different with years of control because he was one of the guys that people talked about when Chourio signed his contract. He was another guy that really early extended. So he is a lot more affordable with more control. But yeah, obviously he's not Juan Soto. It's just a different ball game though. But also can't hurt to ask, and the White Sox
Right.
have only a handful of players worth anything.
And then the Diamondbacks just put Eugenio Suarez on the block, or I guess maybe not on the block, but available in trade returns. He's got a $15 million option for 2025, and they are not expected to pick it up. So kind of crazy that they go on that World Series run, they go and get Montgomery, and then they bolster that offense with Suarez, and now 2 months in, they're thinking, and we give up. I don't know. It just seemed a little strange to me, but yeah, I don't know.
Suarez definitely hasn't hit as well as he has in the past, and that guy, he strikes out like a ton. But obviously we wouldn't do it, and I don't want us to do it. But obviously this year hasn't played this way. But over the last 2 years, and then obviously further back into his All-Star years were even better. But he's actually a better career hitter, and even the last, again, including this year, but dating back to the 2 previous seasons as well, he actually has a better OPS plus than Willie. And I was thinking, imagine if we dealt Willie, moved Joey to short and third base is then Suarez. Again, we won't. Suarez has been bad this year, and Willie's a clubhouse guy. But it's a classic, well, I was gonna say 2K baseball, which dates my baseball video game playing days, but MLB The Show type deal, right? Where maybe someone maxes out Willie's value because he's playing well this year, blah blah blah, and then you get Suarez on a discount and move. But again, not something that's gonna happen in the real world because the Brewers would never trade a main contributor as a division leading team on a soon to be expiring contract or expiring contract, right? Yeah.
I'll date myself with MVP Baseball 2005, the greatest
Ooh.
baseball game ever created.
You mean the bigs too?
Yeah. Ooh,
Prince Fielder just hitting them out of the world.
Mm-hmm. The last thing I had in the MLB news section was the Twins dropped their City Connects, and they are blue on blue with a little bit of yellow. First, every single one of these City Connects I feel like is blue and yellow, but
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. I try not to hate on the City Connects for other teams because, like I said, I'm not in their city, so I don't know if it connects to them or not. But I feel like some of these last couple have been a little forced. I don't know.
I feel like it's fair, the whole
I mean,
land
yeah,
with 10,000 lakes, but
yeah.
I don't know. They're okay.
I'm happy the Brewers. I feel like got some of the better ones. But yeah, as they keep on going, like the Dodgers just released their second City Connects, and I know I sent it to you. Like they just cut off the bottom 10% of the number on the back. Like it just seems like they're trying really
Yeah, I don't
hard
get
to
it.
they're trying really hard to be creative with the look.
I also feel like they could very easily do an actual City Connect to Hollywood and LA, but instead,
Right.
unless I'm really missing something, the newest one, I'm like, okay, it's just a weird
Right.
warm up jersey. Is what it
Mhm.
looks like or something.
I know. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying that I don't get. It's like, I mean, they're fine. They're not. Most of them look better on the field than just in pictures, but yeah, there's some that I don't really get the connection to the city. But hey, it is what it is. The upcoming schedule for the Crew, they got the Blue Jays at home starting tonight, and then the Reds at home this weekend, and then they head to Cali for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim and the San Diego Padres. My beer of the week.
I'll have a brewski, Charlie. Well, there's nothing like a cold one after a long day, huh? Oh, yeah. I've been known to drink a beer or two.
Is actually not a beer. I was at Total Wine this weekend and walked into the cooler and realized, well, I gotta buy it. It is the Gin and Juice by Dre and Snoop Premium Gin Crafted Cocktail. The box was incredible. Cans were incredible. But it was not worth $17.50 for 8 12-ounce cans. So
the feed froze on me when you were talking. I think it might be on my end. I don't know.
I saw you
literally
freeze, but
said-
I figured it'll pick me up. So
Yeah, will on your end. I know it does, but it was funny because you literally like it cut you off literally after you said cock.
do premium gin crafted cocktail.
It was like- and I looked down for a second. I looked up. I'm like, did he just do that pause for dramatic effect to be funny guy on here?
Cocktail. But
Yeah.
they are all right. Not a beer. And then my final thoughts. The one brewer related thing I had was I was comparing the Freddie Peralta and Aaron Ashby deals that they made to avoid some of their arb, and we signed Freddie for 20 through 26 for 5 years, 15.5 million with 2 club options. And then Ashby got 23 to 29, so same amount of years, same 2 club options at the end, but an extra 5 million in guaranteed money at 20.5. So obviously 3 years later, that's part of the extra money, but for all intents and purposes, essentially the same exact deal. And kind of crazy how Freddie's has been an absolute steal, and Ashby is, I mean, he's got plenty of time still. This is only the 2nd year of that deal, but has not been the same yet. So I mean, you see the risk that's the win and lose of the 2 similar deals, but kind of funny how differently they've gone. Hopefully Ashby, like I said, contributes positively to the major league team, but Freddie has been quite a steal.
Yep. Yeah, I think when you hit on a guy on the deal like you did with Freddie, you can totally afford a total L if that's what it is with Ashby, but can't give up yet. But yeah, just bad luck with that deal too. So.
And then I saw a tweet that said that, and this is from last week, so the numbers are maybe a little different, but I figured it's been years. So since Jed Hoyer became the Cubs president, the Brewers are in first place in the division. The Cardinals are 26 games behind that. The Cubs are 52.5 behind the Brewers. The Reds 56 back. Pirates 83 back. So not only are they, it was more of a negative Jed Hoyer tweet, but the Brewers are taking care of business in their own division. And then I saw a tweet from Jay Hay from Baseball's Dead saying Jed Hoyer's best career transaction was acquiring Theo Epstein as a friend.
Yeah, funny. There's a lot of guys across sports that can say that though, in their own way.
And then my last final thought was just to keep dunking on our rivals. The Cardinals' latest giveaway is they're doing an adult mystery size jersey giveaway. So
yeah, I don't get it.
They just got a bunch of like
random
2X jerseys left, and they're like, it's not a mystery jersey, it's a mystery size. I thought that was so stupid. Just give away. What?
Yeah, I don't know.
What's your final thought with your new name there, Bill the Rock Schroeder, and your back?
Yeah,
Bill the
not
Rock
gonna lie,
Schroeder.
actually I took I wrote a bunch of random stuff down, and it'll range from relevant to the Brewers to not relevant at all. So if I'm about to lose some of our audience, goodbye. But now I will start just spitballing on baseball. I guess, yeah, first, The Rock, I think The Rock, not The Rock, just Rock.
Yeah.
Friday, they're doing like a 30 years with the Brewers celebration, and the Brewers Unfiltered.
40, right?
I think it's 30.
He was on the 80s.
No. Sorry, in broadcasting.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And the Brewers Unfiltered podcast, like the sponsored one from the team, led by BA this week, had on a couple of his old teammates, which was, I didn't know actually Paschke used to call Brewers, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought that's really cool.
All those old Brewers highlights I posted got Paschke as the TV guy.
Yeah. And then for Excursion and Darren Sutton, son of MLB legend. And then, BA hosted, and they were just kind of talking about some stories with Rock and how he helped them in their careers. And I know we had Matt LePay on, and he voiced the same. He couldn't say anything bad about Rock and just said how good of a guy he was, as well as good at his job. And Rock's a guy that a lot of fans, I think, really can connect to because he's knowledgeable, but also pretty just laid back and funny. So. Yeah. Hey, you gotta be a homer. It's on the home broadcast, all right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was cool. Another thing that I should have probably just jumped on and talked about right away, but in Reese's homecoming, I just thought literally every day he got a standing O, and I know there was like the footage of that like little girl he like signed an autograph for crying, and then I guess Reese said like he kind of bolted out of there too because he was almost getting emotional, and a really cool connection with the city, and a guy that left on the team's terms after that injury and probably left as cordially as you could. We saw the opposite of that when Council returned to town, how bad it could be. And the Brewers have a good fan base, obviously, and we're part of it, but Philly's got to be maybe the best fan base in baseball, in my opinion, and they put it to show. So it was just really cool to see that homecoming and what that looks like. And then I was just going to talk too about a couple of the big series of the weekend, just because the London series happened, and that's always kind of a big deal. But it actually got overshadowed this week by the Yankees Dodgers matchup. But it's just cool to see the international reach, and I think it'd be obviously I'm not a player and I don't have to deal with the flights, but I would be for the Brewers getting almost in as many of the foreign games as they can. As a smaller market, if we can expand into some of these countries, and I think we have some lovable players. So if we get more exposure around the league and so on, I think it could be a good opportunity, especially Antanasio's affiliation with English soccer too. Like just keep building connection, I guess. I don't know. I think it'd be cool if we keep, I don't know, go to Germany and play into the beer, or go to Ireland or any of that, or even South America or Asia. I know in the past when you go to games, it was always funny. Like people would show up either for Nori Aoki for a while, and then Eric Thames, the adopted Korean. And that was just always awesome, I thought. So more global baseball is good. But like I said, the Yankees Dodgers series was really fun to watch throughout the week, and all the historical videos of the rivalry kind of, and the matchups and so on. And we don't operate like those two franchises. But it is fun to look at them on paper and how they stack up, even with Soto hurt and Garrett Cole isn't back yet, so on. But don't want that to be the World Series necessarily, just because they're both teams I like to root against. But at the same time, like it was just really fun to watch, and just I don't know, so much history. Obviously,
good for baseball when they're both good. Like
yeah, definitely. It felt like one of the bigger regular season series in a really long time. Like both teams are just doing so well with so much star power from giant organizations. Yeah, definitely felt good for baseball. I just kind of wanted to bounce around some random news, a lot less big, I guess, but Harold Ramirez and Calvin Biggio both got DFA'd, which I thought was interesting. Like you're starting to see some of the more interesting roster crunches and moves of guys that aren't performing this year and so on. And some guys that have some talent. Obviously this year we don't really need those type of players just because we're lucky this year with the amount of talent we have on our roster, but some pieces starting to move. And I know Manoah now actually has an elbow injury. I don't know if you saw that. Christian Javier, I think, and is it Urquidy? How do you pronounce his name?
Urquidy.
Urquidy. Yeah, both are TJ, I think, too. So lots of pitchers continue to fall. Obviously, we talked about our own case of that with Gasser, but yeah. And then your favorite player got claimed by the D-backs, Tiago Vieira.
Oh yeah.
Tough one. And then just some random stuff that I thought was interesting, just because I didn't expect to see it, I guess, is the Reds option Graham Ashcraft. He's not been good, but it's kind of weird because he's got talent, you think, and he's been at least okay. And they're not performing really well, and I don't know, they must have someone that they think is going to outperform him, but he's a not established starter at this point, but just was a surprise, I guess, to see. And then a bunch of former Brewers aren't employed by their former teams anymore. Omar Narvaez, Luis Urias, Avisail Garcia all got DFA'd last week. And then Julio Teheran signed with the Orioles, and Brian Anderson signed with the Braves. So I just thought that was funny because all those guys were pieces of our team within the last couple of years. And I mean, BA and Teheran signing shows they weren't on a team recently or just now. And the other guys all getting DFA'd shows they haven't been doing so hot. So just thought that was interesting and reassuring that we didn't pay all those guys because Garcia got a bag, Narvaez got a bag for a while.
That's the
And
silver lining of the small market team.
yeah,
We squeeze out what we can get when they're here, and then we don't have to take the risk on most guys.
yep. And then I thought it was funny. I don't know if you saw. Did you see that the White Sox fans are kind of doing the joke of a All-Star push for MLB?
Yeah,
see that?
I did. Yeah,
Yeah,
Mr. O 79.
that would be something. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be something. But in serious news, one former Brewer, one former organizational piece, I think have a real shot, actually. I don't know about a real shot, but Jesse Winker is actually relative. If he goes as an outfielder, sadly, that's got an argument in the NL right now is his stats this year, and he's been remarkable relative to what we saw last year. So it'd be really funny to see him as an all-star with the Nats. And I also am curious if a contending team is really going to deal for him because I would not like that as a Brewers fan, but some people, I guess, didn't live through what we did last year with him and might want to see that. And then I was going to say David Fry, like, actually has a chance. And he's,
Oh yeah, he has a really
you
good
mentioned Reese
chance.
Olson earlier, but he's another prospect dealt that, especially in his case, like, he was an afterthought. He might have been a player to be named later, but if he wasn't, he might as well have been. And he is lighting it up. So shout out David Fry. But yeah, that's kind of the stuff I wanted to talk about. I think too, with the Braves signing Anderson, and they're obviously in all these rumors, but I'm curious if Wisconsin native Jared Kelenic is really going to get a chance because he's actually hit okay for them this year, but they're playing him favorably in platoons. But they obviously have one less outfielder than they planned on having, and one less reigning MVP. So they need someone to step up. And for part of last year, before he broke his hand, he showed he's got some talent. So just curious. It's fun as pieces start to move and, guys start to get traded. It is very interesting. But that's what I had to talk about.
Yeah, we got Colin Ray versus Jose Barrios going in about an hour, and that's all I had. Go Brewers! Thanks for listening.